Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about when we do speed work or dynamic effort work, that a lot of times people get so hung up in the speed strength component and they try to argue that, powerlifting isn't a speed strength sport, you don't have to be fast to necessarily lift a big max, and so on and so forth. They're missing a lot of the big picture. And we could make an argument against some of that, of what they're saying, but that's really its own separate topic of how much it actually carries over to speed strength and if the speed strength matters to the big lifts. We know it matters to sports. Just one reason I say the conjugate method is probably even better for contact sport athletes, field athletes, and combat athletes than it is powerlifting, even though it does work great for powerlifting. Right? But these other sports, it brings a lot to the table because of that. But let's set that to the side and let's talk about this from a recovery and a programming perspective. All right, here's the thing that we find on the recovery end. When we are doing heavy singles, if we wish to avoid getting beat up, we want to maximize recovery. In fact, if we want to be at a point where we need a lot less deloads in general, so that we can continually make progress every single week with it without overreaching, we can only do so much max effort work. We can only do so much. And so much means very, very little, really. In my case, it's 3 heavy singles a week, all done on Monday and Tuesday. All right, everything else after all of that is hypertrophy training. It's all just to get bigger and thicker. And of course, we make that point that doing the heavy work first attenuates the upper threshold muscle fibers. It primes the peripheral nervous system and things like that in such a manner that we get more efficient use out of our pump work and our volume work. Right? But that's its own topic. But, there are definitely tangible benefits there. This is why I tell people that when we train heavy like that at the start of a workout, it changes the dynamic completely of our hypertrophy work. It changes the dynamic of it because we've already fatigued the highest threshold motor units, right? And we've probably caused some damage to them, to the upper threshold muscle fibers as well, some micro traumas and things going into the volume. But with speed, what this allows us to do is to have more training days to where we get that effect. So we need to think about it from that perspective too. Before we even jump into the training component and the training response to our speed work, think about the fact that because we've exerted maximum force for quite a few reps, we have already attenuated the upper threshold muscle fibers. Okay. Now because we've done that, when we go into the hypertrophy work, we get a very similar benefit to our max work. In fact, some people find that they're even more fatigued going into it than they are from maxes, which means we again get that better training response. So there's that. But the thing is, with the dynamic effort work, it doesn't beat our recovery up anywhere near the same way that maxes do, or even training maxes. It doesn't hit our recovery as hard. In fact, there's almost no recovery negatives to it. There's almost none. It's just due to the nature of the training. So what does that mean? That means that we can get 4 days of quality training in every week with far fewer deloads, if any, needed, right? Far fewer, and we just get less beat up because speed work doesn't beat you up at all. Speed work is very fatiguing while you're doing it, and you better be in shape. It'll help get you in shape if you're not in shape, but you need to be in good shape to do speed work correctly. You'll be out of breath doing it if you do it correctly. Like these sets you see me doing when I do the speed work, these are 30 seconds apart, and on some lifts sometimes I do as many as 10 to 12 sets of them, back to back to back, a set every 30 seconds. Okay, you will be breathing heavy, you'll be wanting to pass out. It's while you're doing it, it feels like conditioning work if it's done correctly. However, If you came in and did speed work and you go do other stuff, in an hour you're going to feel fine. You will feel almost fully recovered from dynamic effort work the same day that you perform it. Even if you feel like you're going to puke while doing it, you recover very quickly. Now, I've also had people say, yeah, but is there a hypertrophy component? We could argue how much. And people, that's the problem I have. People say, well, how many sets do we count? I don't know. I don't know how we should from a fatigue or hypertrophy perspective, but I've had guys who the only work they do on benching is the speed work, or the only work they do for quads is the speed work, and yet their quads and pecs grow. So there is that to think about, something I've observed in my own clients. So there is definitely a hypertrophic component, but it's easy to recover from. And it gives us a lot of time doing maximum exertion lifts. So when we pick the rep ranges on these, a lot of times what we are trying to do is to teach ourselves to push with maximum force for the same amount of time we would on a 1 rep max. In other words, the concentric time on our set on a speed bench or a speed squat should equal, when it's combined together, even though it's 2 or 3 reps, about the same amount of time it takes for us to do a 1 rep max. We've practiced exerting force, we've practiced setting up, we've practiced first reps. So we're getting a skill component, and we're also practicing exerting maximum force for the same amount of time. All right, there are neurological responses to that. And that carries over to your 1 rep max. Now, am I going to say it's as good as doing a max for carrying over? No, because specificity is king. But it absolutely carries over beyond the hypertrophic component. So we get that practice. We get more setup time. So we get practice from something that doesn't really hit our recovery. And like I said, it allows us for the duration of a workout to get a lot of the benefits of doing max work without fatigue. So on a recovery end, this is enormous because it complements the max effort work. It makes us better at it while gleaning many of the benefits of it. So this is why we do it also, is so that we can have 2 days where we come in and lift truly heavy, and then 2 days where we practice exerting maximum force for a lot more volume, but with better recovery. Or instead of max work and speed work, as I've heard Dave Tate like to refer to it, is fast days and slow days. Slow being your max effort days. And that's also a good way to look at it if we want to look at the time component. But it all flows together for recovery. The stress recovery adaptation cycle. And the speed work doesn't beat us up in a way that interferes with our max work in the coming training week. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.